all this stuff is not going to show.
No.
I need to, I don't know what I need to get rid of some of this clutter.
Okay, yeah, we're good. Good morning.
Hello.
This is Zachariah Jackson, BASA News. Today I'm here at Plainfield, New Jersey with Willa Cofield. You know, the other day, what date was that?
Friday.
Friday the 13th.
No.
No,
Friday the 28th.
28th, sorry. 13th was some other thing I
Yeah,
had to
it
do.
was, yeah.
Right, that's right. That's me on it. BASA News the 13th. I remember that. I said, I wonder why they pick a date that that's supposed to be superstitious. You know, Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
On the this Friday, October 27th, 2017, the 76th annual Reverend Richard L. Taylor Freedom Fund Award dinner, and they honored you. But you got a special on it because you got the legacy. Yeah. Now, have you ever, Willa, for the work that you've done throughout your lifetime, have you ever been honored by the ACP?
Never by the ACP.
Never.
No.
Wow.
Not to my knowledge, no.
You would
But
know.
I forget things sometimes. But no.
You've been to their functions and stuff, and I imagine you've been a part of it.
Yeah. I've never been to this particular.
Oh, you've been?
awards
Oh,
dinner.
okay.
I never had you.
Okay. I was there maybe about 6-7 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. Yeah, I think like 2008, 9 or something like that. Someone got honored down there and I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I got footage of it. I just got to go through it, you know. And so, well, there's so much footage of Plainfield.
I really hadn't heard of the event. You know, I knew about the NAACP
In Plainfield.
in Plainfield
Okay.
because they collaborated with us during the Muhlenberg strike,
Okay,
if you
okay,
recall.
right. I remember. I got footage of that also. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But I knew Richard Taylor.
Sure.
He's one of the first. He is the first person that I saw, that I met when I came to Rutgers University.
Oh, he was at Rutgers
He was
University. Oh, okay.
being admitted,
Okay.
and I was negotiating my agreement with the university as well.
So what was the feeling? I mean, an organization as the NAACP, with the legacy, the history of over 100 years now, you know, and I think they celebrated 2009, I think they celebrated 100 years. And so how was that? What was the feeling at that moment of being awarded? Wow.
I was deeply honored.
Yeah.
I was really touched by that award. And part of it had to do with the fact that it's the first time in this particular community that my work had been publicly acknowledged in that way.
Wow. Well, let me ask you, all these years that's went by, the great work that you've done in North Carolina, in North Carolina, why do you think that more people don't know about it?
Well, I haven't made that my primary goal.
Mm-hmm.
In North Carolina, before I moved up here, my case was widely known.
Wow.
It was publicized.
Yeah, I read a book with William Constable.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Bill Constable.
And because of the times and the publicity that the suit got, my name was pretty well known. But when I came to New Jersey, it was totally different. You know? And nobody knew me. I didn't know anybody here. And I had not put my emphasis on making my work in North Carolina known in New Jersey.
It's very humble of you because most people, if they raise a lollipop in the air, they want everyone to hear, hey, I raised a lollipop.
No, that's not my way.
That's not your way.
And that was the point of my talk at the dinner. I wanted to bring light upon those people who had struggled, who had worked hard, who had done as much as I, but had not been acknowledged or celebrated or honored in any way.
We're finding as the 21st century get on its way, we are 17 years in a new century, and we're finding that there's a lot of treasures that we just didn't know.
Absolutely.
That people of color, especially in terms of Black Americans, have done.
Right.
And we have no idea. Like,
Absolutely.
I had no idea that it was the three sisters that, not biological sisters, but three sisters that gave the calculations for the moon landing and all that. I had no idea,
Who
you
knew
know.
that?
I mean, and you know, I kind of feel bad because I've always followed NASA and been to takeoff launches and been past places that probably was named after them, and I just didn't even know it was them.
Absolutely.
And
Well, one of the interesting things about that is that work occurred, a lot of it, at Langley Air Base
okay,
in Virginia.
right.
And it occurred at the time I was at Hampton.
Wow.
So I knew that there should have been some connection between Hampton and those women.
And because of that right there, because of hidden treasures, maybe that's why a lot of our young students, young people will go to Hampton, and even in my age group, I'm 54 years old, and I meet a lot of people that graduated, but they don't seem to have that enthusiasm. They don't have that comeback power, because some
A lot has happened
things.
to us, Zachariah.
But
Since the 60s, I think there has been I don't know whether you would call it a conspiracy, but an effort on the part of some people to make us forget that the 60s ever happened.
But can we say actually, now I know we abuse that term to make us forget, but everyone knows their own pain. And I once heard Al Sharpton say, you know, you can't tell me how to vent my pain, you know what I mean? It's my pain, you know.
That's right.
And what was it about us that it just wasn't really, you know, really taught? You know, it seemed to me, and I'm gonna say this right here, it seemed to me the more that those that became moving on up, those that became educated, the more that they moved away from that pain. Because let me say this right here, and of course I love my mother and father dearly, but they were not educated people in terms of college and things of that nature. You know, my mother went to high school, graduated, and my father finished 9th grade. He's always bragging about that. But he bragged about that a lot in 9th grade. He could read.
Yeah, he wasn't.
And we had to go to work. But I mean, my father was born in 1918. And, but the idea was that I got that from them, the Jim Crow law, the understanding of the Jim Crow. I got that from them. But from a lot of my friends and people I've come in contact with, where their parents were more educated, they had, when I would hang out with their kids, you know, peers my own age, they had no clues. Like I was talking about something from Mars. Outside of Dr. King's birthday, they had no idea. So what was it? Was it in our community, the Black American community, was it you know, once the laws, what we call Jim Crow down south, but the segregation laws, more people more familiar with, that the segregation laws, once those laws was lifted, did we go through a transformation to not indoctrinate our kids, or do we feel that teaching them would indoctrinate them into evil or something of that nature? Because for me, it was a defense.
Our community was at the height of spirit and consciousness during the 60s, particularly the late 60s and into the 70s.
Early 70s, yes.
But the things that happened in the broader context were pressuring us to forget that we had ever experienced that sense of power.
But what was pressuring us to forget our pain, though?
Well, we didn't forget our pain.
Because more people talk about the plantation than they talk about the segregation law.
We still have our pain.
Yes, without a doubt. But I'm saying more people can identify somehow with the plantation than they can identify with the segregation law. Some people don't even know the difference. I talk to people a lot of times and I said, well, you know, if it wasn't for that Jim Crow law, you know, we would be here. But they don't know, a lot of people don't know much about that segregation law. They kind of link the segregation law and plantation and slavery together, and it's too different.
That's because they're so young. You know, when you haven't experienced something,
Yeah.
and all your knowledge of it comes from what you've heard or what you've read, you may get a little confused as to the order of things. And both of those experiences were terrible. The plantation experience,
Sure.
the Jim Crow segregation, the
Sure.
indignity
Yeah,
of being treated less than all the time.
Yes.
Both of those were horrible experiences.
But the Jim Crow seemed to be, to me, I think the Jim Crow was quite worse, because at the Jim Crow you were supposed to go to the state. It's kind of like when you're laying at state. When the person passed, say, hey, they're laying at state this day or that day. The Jim Crow law, which is, for me, a real crown to understand it, and to understand how you got to negotiate to get through it, is, to me, has been like a missile toward us more than chattel slavery, because chattel slavery we were confined to a plantation. But when you have the Jim Crow law, the whole being of you is being weighed even when you go to the store, you know. So I was wondering.
I don't think though that Jim Crow was worse than slavery. I can't imagine anything being worse than slavery when you don't own yourself. When somebody else owns you, when somebody else controls your life, when somebody else can sell you
Yes.
like a piece of beef.
Sure.
So the Jim Crow is bad, and I experienced.
I was
it.
raised that way. I'm just saying, you know, when we, you know, there's churches, and you're familiar with churches that's Jesus only, right? They believe only in Jesus.
Right.
And then there's churches that believe in Father, Son, you know, and the Holy Spirit, and things of that nature. Somebody said, that's churches in Jesus only, or this church is this, that, and other. Well, I was basically brought up really that Jim Crow law was really my enemy, more than, you know, than the plantation and things like that. And I never ruled, out.
Your parents didn't experience the plantation.
Well,
my grandfather,
sure.
and perhaps some of that generation in your family, experienced slavery.
Sure.
And my grandfather said that he never wanted any of his children to have to work for those people who had owned him and had bossed him, because he knew what they were like. And so his whole life was dedicated to try so that when he died, he was able to pass on land so that his children could be independent. He didn't succeed in doing that.
He tried.
But he tried. And that sense of being independent and self-sufficient came from both sides of my family. So that was very strong and continues to be in my background and in the way I think.
Okay. Well, you know, I guess like you said, you went to Hampton and things like that. There would be Booker T. Washington School.
Yeah. I stayed in the building at Hampton that Booker T. Washington cleaned.
Wow.
You know that story about when he walked to Hampton and they told him to clean this room. And he did it 3 times, and then he took his pocket handkerchief and went over everything. And when they came back and saw how thoroughly he had done this job, they said, you know, we want you here. They admitted him to the school.
A lot of people don't know that story that Booker T started out at Hampton and was recruited.
And thoroughly, I guess, imbibed and internalized the philosophy of Hampton, which was education of the hand, the mind, and the heart.
Wow.
And then when he went to Tuskegee, he tried to implement that same model, and perhaps in some ways did it better than they had done in Hampton.
Yeah. Because he was actually up from slavery.
Yes.
He had experience on it. So, what would you like for people to take from, and how can they take from your story and the stories out there that's like yours, to lift them up? Should the young Black American identify with these stories? Or?
Of course. You know, what the essence of what I'm seeing is that our people have a history worth knowing. And I'm not just talking about Dr. Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, any of those people that we read about, But I'm talking about in the ordinary lives of black people.
Sure.
That we have struggled, and we have resisted, and we have tried to lead decent lives. And we continue to this day. We do that in our daily lives. And we have not always had much of an opportunity.
Sure.
But we struggle to keep our families together,
Sure.
to raise our children to be decent people, to keep homes and families together. And with all of these pressures and all of this, the unfair economic picture that we have to deal with all the time.
Wow. Well,
So that's my mission. I'm not trying to be, better up on any hill. I'm trying to say that we all have something. We all have gifts.
Sure.
And we all have histories, and I think our people can be proud
Mm-hmm.
of our struggle. And I think one day history will look upon the struggle that black people have made to create a decent place to live in this hostile, unfair environment as a noble cause. One of the wonders of the world.
Well, I only wish that many would feel that way that you feel, because as I go out and I talk to people, and a lot of times I talk to people, unfortunately, I'll say that unfortunately without the camera. And I kind of wish I could have the camera there so they could see the reflection of themselves. And not everybody even know our history. And some of us, some African Americans, I believe, need to
I
go to
don't
school.
think any of us really know it. Well, I mean, some scholars maybe, but most of us get little pieces,
Sure.
and we know names, but we have no idea of what has really happened to our people. I know in the 60s, when we were struggling in infield, people started coming to us telling us things that had happened, horrible things that happened, after slavery. Many of the people didn't want to talk about it.
Sure.
It was so bad
Mm-hmm.
that they just were very reticent. They didn't want to deal with it. They thought over, and they wanted to face a new life.
Sure.
So many of the things that happened to black people, they don't talk about.
Let me say this
And
here.
there's fear there, that and we internalize so much of the oppression that we feel guilty in some ways for what happens to us when we are not guilty.
That's true. Let me ask you this here. I guess this is probably a question that's probably never been asked. What would have happened to us if after 1863, and of course for the brothers and sisters in Texas, 1865, if there were no segregation, Jim Crow law?
Wow. Well, we have.
And another question I'm going to pose to you too. Why was it so important that the powers that be put that law on us?
Well, they didn't want to give up slavery. And so they invented something else that was almost as bad as slavery. And so, that kept us in an oppressed state. What I was thinking about, though, an example, what would have happened if there had been no Jim Crow, if we had had a fair chance?
And that would have been a fair
I tell you
chance.
one thing, I think this country would be much different from what it is today. The people who were freed, it's an amazing thing. There were two things I understand that the freed people wanted. They wanted land,
Sure.
because they recognized that if they could get land, there was an economic base. They could make a living, they could grow crops, they could farm, they could take care of their families. But the other thing they wanted was education.
Sure.
And so many of the blacks who got to the legislatures in the South started the basis for the public school education in the South. Our people, it's an amazing thing to think of people who had been enslaved for hundreds of years, that when they're freed, what do they want? They want education. They wanted to know how to read the Bible. That was one of the big motives for learning to read.
Sure.
They wanted their children to have education. They wanted land. And down on the South Sea Islands,
In South Carolina, North Carolina.
off the coast of Georgia, South Carolina.
Okay. What we call the Sea Islands.
Yes, the Sea Islands. Black people were able to take over a certain area. And when one of the generals went through to look at it, it was beautiful. People were cultivating their crops. They had little homes. It was thriving. But all of that land was taken away.
Wow.
The plantation owners came back from the war, wherever they had been. They reclaimed those homes. And General Howard, for whom Howard University was named, had to go tell those people that they had to give up that land. And they said, as he talked, the tears were flowing down his face because he saw what these people could do.
Now, General Howard was white, is that correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So,
We didn't have any black generals in the Civil War. They had a lot of black soldiers.
soldiers, not the generals, lieutenants or whatever. Right, good man. Wow. So what would you like to say to the youth as we conclude this interview? And a salute to the NAACP of Plainfield, New Jersey chapter. I don't know, is there a number on the chapter of
I
just
don't know.
NAACP
I don't
Plainfield?
think so.
And what would you like to say to the young people today? Should we become involved in the struggle? Should we join the NAACP? And what should we do at this point in the challenge? I think that what the people in the West always say, where do we go from here?
Really? Well, I taught young people, and I tried to, as my teachers ahead of me when I was in school, had given me a sense of pride in who I was and in my people. And that's what I tried to do with the young people that I taught. I just want to say that the 3 students that I named in my talk Friday night saw the recording of that talk, and they emailed me and told me that they wept
Wow.
as they watched that talk. I have a feeling that it was the first time that their contribution, that their struggle, that their bravery had been acknowledged in a public way. So that young people, we have beautiful young people. They are filled with life and spirit and strength, and they need to know it. And we need to tell them every time we get a chance. We need to support our young people. We need to help them become proud of who they are, to see themselves, really see who they are, that they are strong and beautiful and gifted. Back in the 60s, every time we got together, we would sing Being Young, Gifted, and Black.
Okay.
That became like our national anthem, our song, to be young, gifted, and black. Oh, what a wonderful feeling. And if we could reclaim some of that, it's just, our history, one reason we don't know it is it's filled with so much pain, and we have been so mistreated that people don't want to talk about it. But we need to know that history.
But through that pain, that we've made a lot of accomplishments, and I think
Through that pain, we have struggled against it with whatever tools were available. We have struggled. We have not given in, and we continue to struggle.
But you know, I think that what I see is so many people don't want to talk about it, and through that pain. But through that pain, as an African American, we have really
like the oyster lady. Like the grain of sand and the oyster?
Yes, and turn it into a diamond, without a doubt.
Yes.
But the idea is that if you don't talk about the diamond, then who knows? The pearl, I'm sorry, I said diamond, right? Pearl, right? It was just you know, I was on a plane once with an Iranian woman, and she was talking where they come from, Iran and Persia, that they really go after the pearl. A lot of times you see the ring and you see that little thing in there, that you think, oh, that's a ring you found you bought from a
jeweler.
Yeah, well, a cheap jeweler. You see, she said, no, this pearl sometimes costs twice as much as that, 3 times as much as that diamond, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a fascinating trip from California to New Jersey, and she talked about pearls, and we more into pearls. And she had some pearl rings on, you know, black pearl rings and everything. But when do we really talk about the pearl? Do we talk about the pearl enough? Because I think that, you know, so many people don't know that even the institutions that we have, the colleges that we have, or some of the things that we have overcome, that do we, you know, you have to make everything attractive, you know.
We have to take advantage of whatever opportunities we have.
Yeah.
That has been my philosophy, that wherever you are, what is it that you can do for somebody else, and particularly, what can you do for your people?
Sure.
For example, when I was at the New Jersey Department of Education, I saw the opportunity to start a Black Women's History Conference. And that was 1983.
Yeah.
And here we are in 2017, and we still have a Black Women's History Conference. So if we look at an obligation, because our people have carried on the struggle for all these bitter, long years, and that's why we live as well as we do today.
Sure.
So we have an obligation, because my father and his father and his father, that they did the best they could to make a decent life for me. So I have to do the best I can to pass that on to others. And that's what I think each of us should do. And when we do well with our own life, then we help somebody else.
Sure.
The best gift you can give to your mother and your parents is to be the best person you can be.
That's right.
Then they say, oh, you know, I did something good here. I brought up somebody who can take care of himself, who is honest and good, and knows how to treat other people well, and does what he can for his community. And so that affirms me as well as you.
Well, I'm going to conclude with this here. You're writing a book.
Yes, with other people.
With other people. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what will the book be called? What's the name of the book? Have you guys come up with a name?
Well, the book title that has been suggested, I think I referred to this in my talk, is the 5 o'clock whistle, not the 5 o'clock whistle, that was
9 o'clock whistle.
The 9 o'clock whistle.
Yes, yeah.
The 9
o'clock whistle. Okay. And when do you think this book should be out?
Well, we wanted to have it for my 90th birthday.
Which is October?
2nd.
2nd next year.
Yes, but whether we can, if we are well on the way, I'll be happy. You know, we don't have to have it so we can hand it out. But if people are writing and working, and people are already writing.
Okay. So it's going to be a book that's not just going to be written by you, but
absolutely. It's a collective effort.
Wow.
The students who experienced things in the 60s are going to write about those experiences. And other people who were in similar communities like Enfield, we're going to invite, if we can identify them, we're going to invite them to contribute.
Now, you're talking about also going to Enfield next month.
Yes.
Okay, and what will that trip entail?
Well, the people who are writing the book will get together, and I'm also doing a documentary about that period and about my life.
So they're all coming in, all the writers are coming?
Yes,
okay.
The major writers.
Right.
And hopefully we'll get some interviews. There's some key people who have not been interviewed at all. And so hopefully we will get some interviews, and we'll do some moving around in the community and filming some of the sites that were very important.
Well, I'm going to try my best to have our cameras out.
All right.
Try to be down there. Well, again, I'm here with Willa Cofield in Plainfield, New Jersey, and she was honored October 27th on a Friday by Plainfield chapter of the NAACP, and it was a good honor. And I was there, and a few other friends was there also, and of course she got that Legend Award, and she spoke well, and people are talking about your speech and the fire and things of that nature, you know. So on YouTube and Facebook and Yahoo and everything. So it was good. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachariah. Thank you for all the help that you have extended. Someone was saying to me just yesterday, and Zachariah looks so nice. And I said, yes, he was very professional in the way he carried out his role. So thank you very much for this opportunity and for all the help you've given.
I'm planning to learn a lot on this project.
Okay.
Things that I thought, I didn't know, and I'm learning, and I'm gonna continue to learn and share it with the views, share it with the people, and let them take it and do something with it. I think it's a worthwhile project.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Also,
Start over, Sly.
facility. So again, on October 18th, Tatiana Cunningham, the sister right here in the gray, she went inside this facility because she works here. She went inside this facility because she's part of a training program under the County Urban League. When she proceeded to go inside